Ha, 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 yeah.
3, 2, 1, action. What's going on, everybody? Zach Evanish here with another episode of the Strongcast, and I'm coming to you from a place I don't really work from too much, which is the living room. When nobody's here, I'm crushing work, so you might hear some crazy dogs barking, but gotta keep it real. And let me tell you guys what we have going on in episode number 11 of the Strongcast. I've got an interview with former Navy SEAL Stu Smith. Stu is what many would call an OG. Back in the late 90s, he already had an e-commerce website, was sharing information on how to train for buds to become a Navy SEAL, sharing information on training in general for military and being a badass, which all of you know, I'm a fan of all things badassery. And speaking of which, I'm crushing right now a little bit of bulletproof coffee. Yum, 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 yum. And want to preempt or crush this episode of the Strongcast before we get into our interview with Stu with some things I've been learning, some things that are coming up in the year 2014, some things you want to keep an eye out on because they're all going to kick ass and this is going to be very beneficial to you. So I tend to go in these circles or these waves in life where I get extremely busy and then I kind of reel it all back in and try to simplify life. And a couple of movies and books have really hit home for me that I want to share with you guys. And I share this if you're a subscriber to the Underground Strength Insider. That's the free newsletter that you could get at undergroundstrength.tv. So make sure you head over there, subscribe, get on the daily emails, the motivation, the inspiration, the information, and the ass kickery. So one movie that was recommended to me by the guys that I train at the Underground Strength Gym was Into the Wild. And then when I shared how pumped up I was on Facebook, Twitter, everybody that commented that had read the book said that you must read the book, that the book is even better, which reminds me a little bit of if you've seen Lone Survivor. The movie was awesome, but the book is that much more awesome. Into the Wild is essentially about this young kid who just wants to simplify his life, wants to remove, I think, all the flashy things in life, and really just wants to be, quote unquote, out there into the wild. And it's a great, gives you a lot of introspective onto your own life. Are you simplifying things, buying things you don't need, buying things because you're bored? And from that point, started coming across for some reason or thinking about the company Patagonia. And Yvon Chouinard, who is the founder and owner of Patagonia, has a great book out called Let My People Go Surfing. It's a very unique and interesting way about how he runs his business and how and why he started a business it was his hobby. He was a rock climber and a surfer, and he wanted to find a way to create some sort of a job for himself where he could go out, surf when the waves were good, climb and travel when he wanted, go hiking and doing all these things when the weather and when those elements were basically at their best. And what's interesting is when you hear people, myself as an entrepreneur, running 2 locations of the Underground Strength Gym, the online business, people all the time, and even to this day, and years ago, were telling me to keep my teaching job when I was a teacher, taught for 11 years. They said, hold on to that job, hold on to that health insurance, to the benefits. And I will never forget walking into the faculty room one day, and it looked like I walked into a funeral. All the teachers were sitting there at the tables facing one another, and none of them were talking. None of them had a smile on their face. They were like zombies. I mean, if the zombie apocalypse was happening, that sure as hell was it. And I'll never forget in my gut, and I'm getting more and more in tune with really not denying my gut instincts, and the same goes for you. Start getting better at listening to your gut instincts. So in my gut, I remember when I walked out of that factory room, I said to myself, holy shit, holy shit. If that's what's going to happen to me, if that's what I'm supposed to be here doing, keeping health insurance and benefits and being a clock puncher and counting down the days until I retire, until the end of the year, until Friday comes, until vacation comes, hell's no. Because I knew I would never be an inspiration to my family, to my kids, And to anybody out there who would follow me through YouTube and all these other places where people were coming across me, I knew that that would not be walking the talk if I'm out there telling people to get out there and kick some ass, and I was going to stay in a place where everybody was like zombies doing the shit that they hated to do. That is just no way to live. So really interesting coming across Let My People Go Surfing, Into the Wild. It is truly about people following their gut instincts, doing what makes them happy, and finding a way to do those things versus finding a way to simply make money, to simply chase the dollar, which is what some of those people in teaching were doing. It was a great pay. You worked 182 days out of the year. You had every weekend, all the vacations, all the holidays, the summertime off. It was great. But how can you live 30 years or 20 years or however many years of your life working, being unhappy, living for the weekend, dreading Sunday night because Monday morning's coming around? So I'm really focusing on simplifying a lot of things, and it's even gone into my training. I've basically been training with a barbell only. Here and there, I'll throw in some kettlebell work. Of course, I'm doing my body weight training, but I haven't been using sandbags. I haven't been doing a whole lot of, tire flipping, keg training, any of that stuff. I'm doing squats, clean and jerk, clean and press, barbell row, benching, overhead pressing, and different kind of just, basic powerlifting, basic weightlifting drills. And the results are great. And I'm just getting back to that simplicity. And that's what I want you guys to start thinking about, is kind of looking at your life and saying, do I need that fancy car? Do I need these fancy workouts? Do I need this fancy phone, fancy this? And look, I'm just as guilty as many other people. I've got the iPhone. Here and there, I splurge and buy something for myself, okay? But I don't buy myself new clothes. I'd rather spend the money on my own kids. And even looking to simplify the whole living thing, like living here in New Jersey, high cost of living, high stress, crazy people, really thinking of moving and even taking that underground strength gym to what my dream is, which is putting the underground strength gym in a barn, making it more private, making it more exclusive. If you've heard of Jim Jones, that's a pretty similar operation that I would be wanting to do my kind of work in, because I personally feel that you make yourself too available, there's no value to any of that. So I'm looking at even making myself less available, not just in the gym setting, but also in the online world. Okay? So that is that. Think about simplifying your life. Check out the movie and the book Into the Wild. Really the great book, Let My People Go Surfing. If you are a business person or entrepreneur of any sort, that would be also great and powerful for you to read. And think about simplifying your training. And if you want to follow my training, you want to get coaching from me, like I said, I'll be less accessible, minus the people that attend my certification. And I'll be in San Diego soon, as well as St. Petersburg, Florida, at Elliot Hulse's gym. When I'm in San Diego, I'll be at CrossFit SoCal. All the information on our certification is at undergroundstrength.org. And I would love to say we've got sponsors, but damn, kids, ain't nobody throwing money at me. Nobody's sponsoring us. I haven't gone out of my way to ask for sponsorship, but getting a little bit of work happening with a couple clothing companies. You might see some Underground Strength Gym shirts through a pretty large online retailer, and I'll announce that through the Underground Strength Insider. Moving some books onto Kindle, so we're going to be on Amazon soon. Dragon Door in the works right now of designing and finishing up the design process to the new Underground Strength book. I guarantee you that book is going to blow your mind and rock your world. And I'm looking forward to some warm weather. Those of you on the Northeast, you know what I'm talking about. I just want to get out there and mountain bike and skateboard and go swimming, go surfing, and open up my garage door to the gym and lift with some sunshine and some hot ass air. Love that stuff. So without further ado, Strongcast number 11. Enjoy this one with Stu Smith, former Navy SEAL. You guys are going to love it, and I'm out of here. Peace. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to Strongcast episode number 11. We're here with Stu Smith, former Navy SEAL, and a guy who's really, been around the block, who's been doing things with fitness, with military, with strength and conditioning, before even I was doing stuff on the internet. So people actually call me an OG when they see my stuff. But I remember you were really one of the first guys. If I did any kind of search, I think even before Google was around, seeing what is, training for Navy SEALs, training for Spec Ops. So real pleasure to have you on, Strongcast, and thanks for taking the time, Stu.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on, Zach, man. I really enjoy your stuff. You
Cool.
got some great ideas floating around there.
That
Good
is
stuff.
that is awesome. That means a lot to me. And my son and my daughter, they're young, but my son is like big fan of watching all kinds of military videos. We watch Bud's Class 234 on YouTube a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's just important out there that the younger generation, and I know you'll know, probably you've seen that big change, is that I live here in New Jersey, and when 9/11 happened, we could see that the cloud from the towers and all that stuff. So I really explained to my son and my daughter all the time that the reason, I could kiss them to sleep good night and it's peaceful is because we've got guys like yourself and other military men and women on the front lines that protect us. They don't get that as much, but I really try to get that to hit home. So for me to say thank you to you and to any other military active and former, like, it just doesn't do justice. I mean, from my heart, it just means the world to me, man. So I can't thank you enough or really put it into words.
Well, thank you. That's very nice.
So let's give people a little bit of detailed background on you. Like I mentioned, you're former SEAL. You're highly involved still with training active duty military and also prepping men and women for the military. So and you've also really been one of the innovators and the earliest guys on the internet putting out information. I've got 2 of your books here, which we'll get into later, and you just got a lot of stuff. So give everybody a little background, brief history of when you were younger, kind of what spurred you to become a SEAL, and what was your upbringing like as a teenager, as a kid?
Oh, okay. We go way back. All right. No, man, I was just one of those kids that always liked to work out. In fact, I first started with sports, and then I realized, I could be working out and get better at these sports. And, back in, that was early 80s, back when I was a teenager. So, there wasn't a whole lot out there. So you kind of created some of your own stuff. You saw what worked, saw what didn't work. There were a lot of Joe Weider books in my house, back then. And there was mostly, kind of cutting my teeth probably in the bodybuilding,
Right.
For the first couple of years. And then I finally, once I got into high school, I had a great powerlifting coach. So he showed me all the power lifts. And, I remember it was a year before I think we went anywhere over my body weight in squats or deadlifts or anything. I mean, it was really focused on form, doing everything properly. And that helped a lot. That gave me a good foundation to kind of build from there. And I was more of the football player, power lifter type. Loved all that stuff. That's where, the rest of my high school time was spent. I, played baseball too, but then I started getting so big I couldn't throw the baseball anymore, so I kind of dropped baseball. In hindsight, I wish somebody probably would have told me I was going to be an average-sized white guy when I grew up. I probably would have focused more on baseball because I was a pretty good baseball player at the time, So, but I love football, and I wanted to play college football and got recruited by Navy, so I went to the Naval Academy and tried. It was a long story, coaching. The old coaching staff that recruited me was all fired after, Army-Navy game before I was recruited. And then, the new coaching staff didn't hear anything about me. I tried to walk on, just wasn't working, and wound up losing 25 pounds when I got there for plebe summer. So I wound up playing rugby for the rest. I tried football for a semester. Like I said, it just didn't work out that well. And then played rugby for 3.5 years. And that worked out really well. One, because we were winning. We played a lot of fun teams. And rugby's a great sport. I mean, it's just very social. And I think being locked up at the Naval Academy, it allowed me to, be a little more social than the average kid at a service academy.
Right.
So I think I needed that, as a college student. Probably kept me from going insane. So that was good. And then we had 4 guys on our rugby team that all wanted to be SEALs. So, and there were some older, upperclassmen that were going to SEAL training, and so they were kind of our mentors. And next thing I know, we're all doing rugby practice, rugby games. We're swimming before the workouts. We're running after the practices. We're just getting in really good shape to go to SEAL training. And after we graduated SEAL training, we sent 20 of our Naval Academy class to SEAL training, and spread throughout the year, and all 20 of us made it. So we had a 100% graduation rate from the Naval Academy at that time. And when you hear about SEAL training, it was a 75% attrition rate in my buds class. I mean, we started off with 120 and we graduated 28. So all the officers from the academy were spread out in different classes, but like I said, we all made it through with 100% graduation. So not that we were tougher than anybody. I think that we just had some really good instructors at the academy at the time, and they were all SEALs.
Right.
So we kind of got beat down for about 3 years of prep for SEAL training, which I think helped us, become a little more mentally tough. Not be surprised when the head game started coming, or when people were yelling at you and adding stress to your workouts. I think we were just really prepared. And after that, I went straight to the SEAL teams, which was a great 8 years of travel and a lot of training. It was good stuff.
Let me ask you a question. Back in the 80s, compared to today, or even compared to maybe the early to mid 90s, there wasn't a whole lot of information out there on the SEALs. I mean, it's not out. I mean, you were at the Naval Academy, so you were around SEALs, but what, today when you hear of, the kids that want to become SEALs, or that generation right around 9/11, that was a big motivation for them. I mean, not a big history buff, but don't know when our country was attacked last, and that was a big life changer for a lot of these younger kids. And back in the 80s, what was like your motivation to say, I want to become a SEAL, aside from the fact that maybe you knew a couple SEALs at the Naval Academy?
Right. You know what? That's a good question, because I grew up in North Florida, so I was always swimming. I knew I wanted to do something in the military. I just didn't know what. And at the time when I started applying to the Naval Academy, Top Gun was out, right? That classic pilot movie. Everybody wanted to be a pilot, in my class. So that's really what first got me into thinking I could, go to Naval Academy and, maybe be a pilot. But then once I got there, there was this guy that he was just a badass. I just gotta say, he was just, everybody was impressed by him. No one knew what he did. I was like, then I started doing a little more research on, what, Navy Special Warfare was all about. And it was funny because I remember when I was a kid swimming, in local swimming pools, I'd always pretend I was a Navy frogman. I had no idea what a Navy frogman was, but darn it, I was pretending I was a Navy frogman. Frogmen were, the Navy SEAL forefathers.
Right.
So it's kind of funny. I think, even as a, 8, 9, 10-year-old kid, I was, playing Navy frogman games, and I guess it was meant to happen.
It's one of my buddies who's a BUDS instructor posted an article that I think the first Navy frogman just recently passed away. And did you see that article?
I did, yeah.
And the training was just brutal. Not obviously because the training is brutal, but also their equipment and was so poor. But the toughness factor that guy had just, it changed it. It just I think it was like the big thing. And what always interests me is, Stu, is that I look through your books and then you hear and tell me about in the 80s. In the 80s, there was no quote unquote functional strength and conditioning. It was bodybuilding, and it was Joe Weider. Once those early 80s came and Arnold was in the movies, everything was like very machine and surface focused, meaning just how to make you look good, not so much how to be a bad, how to be a bad son of a bitch, how to be a tough dude. And but I've still seen guys that are with bodybuilding backgrounds make it through buds and successfully become SEALs. In fact, a guy I trained with when I was a teenager, he could bench and curl and do sit-ups. He could run and swim, but he would get crushed if we did squats. He wasn't good at pull-ups, but he was so tough. But also back then, this was 94. Was it? Yeah, it was 94. That then too was not a lot of. There was no strength and conditioning, maybe unless you were in the colleges. And I think in the colleges they were doing a lot of HIIT, all-out set. So even in your books, there's still bodybuilding movements, which I still believe are beneficial. Because I think you get strong through a lot of ways, and it's good to still do bodybuilding movements. But today, like, everybody's kind of shying away from that stuff. Talk to me about, like, here's guys, yourself included, you became a SEAL, you had a powerlifting background, but you were influenced through Joe Weider, as probably 90% of the guys that graduated with you were. What do you think is like the X factor that helps a guy become a SEAL, even if he's not in the, I would say, really the optimal training? Guys that are training like bodybuilders, doing a lot of benching and curls and not doing a lot of squatting and deadlifting, but still those guys are still making it. What's the X factor?
Oh man, you know what? That's a great question, because I have been trying to help people become SEALs since probably about 95. So it's been almost 20 years now where I've been, I was active duty and still helping, kids prepare for it as well. You know what? I've never been able to figure it out. I've never been able to measure someone's heart, because I have sent guys, when I say I've sent guys, I've prepared guys who later went on to SEAL training, who I thought for sure were going to blow everything away. I mean, typical scores on, 2-minute push-ups, 120 plus, 2-minute sit-ups, 100 plus, 25, 30 pull-ups, no problem. Being able to run sub 6 miles, 2 or 3 miles, no problem. Swimming real fast, maybe 7-minute, 500-yard swims, with combat swimmer stroke, which are those scores are off the chart good. And they wouldn't make it for some reason. And I just had no idea. I thought for sure he's going to make it. And there's a variety of things that get you. Stress, not used to being, yelled at, being told you're the worst student ever to come through SEAL training, and how that affects you. I can't tell you how many times I was the worst officer ever to go through SEAL training. They told me that, when I was going through buds, and, and you have to shake it off and just let it not affect you and then come back stronger, and I realized when I was going through SEAL training, whenever the instructors realized they couldn't hurt you anymore, right? They knew that you were going to just keep on going no matter what, no matter if it was thousands of push-ups or overhead with a log or a boat and running for miles or swimming for miles. They weren't going to hurt you, right? They couldn't hurt you. You weren't going to stop. Then they started playing with the head games. And it was you're either a bad leader, or, hey, you got a girlfriend. Oh, you're married, right? Yeah, I used to be married. And they start playing that game, So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to get people thinking, well, maybe this isn't the life for me. And it isn't necessarily a physical thing, because I've seen guys on the other end of the spectrum barely making the minimum standard to get into SEAL training, and yet they graduate. And then there's some statistics out there that if you reach those old minimum standards to get into SEAL training, you have a 6% chance of graduating SEAL training. So there are 6% who are just off the chart, mentally tough, and able to just basically suck it up every day I mean, every day is a traumatic event for them almost, if you think about it physically. Whereas if you show up in really good shape, it's just another workout. You know what I mean? Your people walk out of one of your workouts. Some of them are walking out, coking, joking, having a good time. Others are crawling out, because they feel like crap. Well, but they come back the next day. That's the type of guy that makes it through SEAL training. Even though it kicked their butt, they come back the next day and they don't quit. And you can't measure that. You really can't.
Yeah, and a lot of people, you hear them say that you just can't teach mental toughness, or you can't teach somebody to have that X factor in the mind. And I've worked with a lot of athletes where they start at a younger age, maybe freshman year, and they aren't that tough. And then it takes them some time to turn the corner, and they mature, and they do become tough. And like right now, I have a crew of kids that are seniors in high school, and they're doing extremely well, extremely well. And if anybody looked at them 2 to 3 years ago, nobody would have said, that kid's going to win the counties, that kid's going to be ranked, or he's going to place in the state. And they turned the corner. And even with myself, when I was a high school wrestler, I didn't have the do or die attitude. I was not out to like win at all costs. But then when I turned 19, 20, my confidence and my mental toughness, and I think also, I know just from learning and reading a lot of autobiographies and books from SEALs, it taught me how to utilize my mind in a different manner. And sometimes something as simple as, a friend of yours, Mark Devine, he says,
Yep.
just remove the quit from your vocabulary. What do you think about this? You can't teach mental toughness. You can teach it. What are your thoughts on that? Because you are training people for so long. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you definitely can teach it, but it isn't one of those things that's a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation. I mean, this is, I say it's a 30-year process. It's not, but I mean, you can do it in a couple of years, but it takes dedication. It takes persistence. Every day when you wake up and your alarm clock wakes you up at 5 a.m. because you're going to work out before school, that's one of those days when you decide to get up, you have just become a little more mentally tough.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's every day like that. And it's, jumping into a swimming pool when it's winter, whether it's indoors or outdoors. In Florida, we didn't have indoor pools. We had outdoor pools, but it would still get cold, but you jump in the pool and there's that one little second, right before you jump in that you really just don't want to jump in, but you do it anyway. It's breaking through those little moments where you just say, I really don't want to do this, and then, shut it down. Mark has a great program, taking out can't and quit, and, all those words out of your vocabulary are, first step, in building your mental toughness. But it really, in the end, it comes down to persistence, and, a week of persistence turns into a month of persistence, turns into a year of persistence, turns into a decade. Next thing you know, you're really damn tough.
Yeah, it's definitely, I believe, it's the time factor, and it's like always doing those little things. Exactly what you're saying. Like, you're either waking up for that alarm clock or you're hitting the snooze button, and the guy that keeps hitting the snooze button or the girl that keeps hitting the snooze button, eventually you're just not gonna have the confidence. You're not gonna have the belief. Those doubts are gonna creep in. I want to take it to the other side. And this is an interesting question. I want to hear your thoughts on it, because you were a SEAL in the 80s and all the way into the 90s as well.
Well, I went to the Naval Academy in 87.
Okay.
Graduated in 91. Was at SEAL training in 91. Graduated SEAL training in 92. So from 92 until 99, end of 91, 92 till 99, I was in the SEAL teams.
And so it's 2014, 15 years later, and here you are still highly motivated, physically highly motivated in an entrepreneurial way. You're not slowing down, but I've seen former SEALs, I've seen former, 2 times wrestling state champs, national All-Americans. They lose it. Like, they stop competing, and then they're fat, they're weak, they're like, it's like they had enough of the trying to be tough. What do you do, and what do you recommend other men, other adults do to keep what I call that edge, so that you're constantly moving forward versus, all right, I'm done being a SEAL. Or for somebody else, it might be, I'm done playing high school football. And then it's, they gain 20 pounds. They can't do a push-up. You know, I train adult men now, and a lot of them just lost it. They just
Yeah.
lost their ability to be men. What do you personally do? And what would you recommend for others to keep that edge or regain it?
Great question. I've always been working out. I remember when I first got out and I was starting my business, and I came up with that first book that you have there, The Complete Guide to Navy SEAL Fitness, right as I got out of the Navy. And so I was thinking of ways to, promote that and sell it. And, so I started another fitness business around it, online fitness and things like that. So that was back in, end of 99. And I found that, I was still working out on my own, but, not very intense as I used to be. I'd change it up, I'd create programs, but I found out if I really wanted to write about training, I needed to be training. And the type of kids that I wanted to train can't afford personal training, right? Typically. They're high school kids, or, might be college kids, might be out of high school, not going to college, and want to join the military. So I created a program called the Heroes of Tomorrow. And it's a nonprofit program. We don't make any money, and luckily we got a local facility here in Maryland where they let us train there for free. And kids, well, I say kids, they're high school, college age guys come in, and gals come in, and we train hard. And it's a free program. It's like I said, those guys keep me young, and I found that was probably what I needed, to be able to just keep training people, especially if I'm going to write about it. Because if I'm going to write about training, I need to be seeing the problems. I need to be seeing what people are trying to get over. What are they trying to go for? Is it this certain test? Is it this certain injury they got to work around? So all those little things, I think, kept my mind and my body, working in the right direction.
Yeah.
So to speak. And it's been a great, it's getting, 15 years, like you said. It's been a great 15-year evolution.
So you train with these high school kids?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I tried, and you know what? I do the workouts too.
Yeah.
I did a killer workout today with about 15 guys, and we had a 2-hour delay due to snow, so
right.
Usually I have to slide out a little bit early because I take my kids to school.
Yep.
But we crushed it for like 2.5 hours of, we had a weight, we had calisthenics, we had a big swim workout, PT on the pool deck in between swimming laps. So it was great. It was just good workout. We had a couple first timers there.
Nice. So you took them through the workout. You trained with them side by side. I know high school kids, like, you could throw the kitchen sink at them, and once they're in shape, they don't have an off switch.
Right. Oh yeah, their recovery time is off the chart. Mine, I'm still limping around from Monday's lunge workout. So yeah, that's just the way it is. I am on as a 45-year-old, athlete, or whatever you want to call it. I'm on a constant search for recovery programming. I try to really focus on, eating well. If I'm not eating perfectly, I may have to supplement something, just to make sure that I'm getting the right nutrients. And then, the biggest thing for me is sleeping. If I don't get at least 6 hours, my week's ruined. By the time I've done my 5th or 6th workout, I'm messed up. So if I'm getting 6 to 8, I'm good to go.
Right. The more I do the research, and even the more I've been focusing on trying to improve body composition, really any of the guys that are at the forefront, they say that number one is you need to sleep. They say 8 hours. I was also doing the 6 hours. They say you got to get in those 8 hours. And a big thing that came through years has been intermittent fasting, training while fasted, and any of really the people that when I talk to them about that, they say the first thing is like that. They say that often is going to break your metabolism.
Yeah.
And they go back to recommending that old school, bodybuilding diet of eating meals every 3 hours, keep feeding your body. And I mean, I know SEALs and you guys eat because you train so hard. How are you eating today? I know you're obviously probably don't normally train 2.5 hour lifting and swimming and all that, but how do you eat today? Age 45, where a typical man at that age, even 25, is starting to really pack on the pounds and metabolism going down. How do you eat today? What does like today look like for you?
Well, I will say this. I usually have a lifting cycle. I break up my year into 4 quarters. So right now we're at the kind of the middle of our lifting cycle. Kind of lift during the winter months.
Yep.
Run a little bit less because it's icy out there. If we run, it might be on a treadmill or something. Or we'll put on a ruck or we'll swim. So we'll get some amount of cardio, but it's really focused on lifting, trying to get bigger, try to put on a few pounds of muscle. And it just so happens to coincide with football, which on the weekends, I will sit on my butt 8 hours at least watching football. I just love football. And when I do that, I eat way too much. So, football season, I put on some weight. But it's usually mixed in with a lot of muscle too. So it works for me.
Okay. Now,
coming at the end of, and this is even at 45, so coming at the end of, February, we'll start tapering off the weights, and we'll just go strictly calisthenics, running and swimming. So by mid-spring, we're 100% in calisthenics. I mean, we still do some weighted stuff, but it's more like very functional military movements like fireman carries, body drags, bear crawls, those type of things that you still working everything in your body, and it's weighted. It's just not a barbell.
Right.
So still get involved with it, but it's just trying to make it a little more useful to the guys that are training with us. So by that time, everybody's leaning out. We'll probably drop another 10 pounds just from changing the workout up a little bit. So that's what I usually recommend people to do, especially as we're aging, is take a cycle and don't worry if you gain weight. But if you're going to gain weight, make sure you're putting on the weights, and maybe dropping your reps down to 5 reps with a little heavier weight. Put on some muscle mass while you do it. And then it's real easy to lose that fat once you got that muscle mass, because if you're sitting on your butt eating, doing nothing, it's going to take a lot longer to lose that body fat that you put on.
Right. Yeah, the body weight training, I always say, like, tells you the truth. Like, if you're unable to do pull-ups and rope climbing and jumping, I say it's 2 things. 1, you're probably too fat. Number 2, you're too weak. You gotta, you gotta get strong. Now, these training cycles, and when you're training the kids, the heroes of tomorrow, are those kids competitive athletes? Are they not competing, or what are they training for?
Another great question. Man, you're good. Yeah, they're all a mix. We got a mix of everything. We get guys, that are football players, that are lacrosse players. Lacrosse here in Maryland's huge.
Yep.
So we get a lot of lacrosse players, who, by the way, are doing really well going through SEAL training. Not sure why, and even the SEAL community is not sure why, but it seems like lacrosse players are really kicking butt going through SEAL training.
Yeah.
Even more than swimmers or your cross-country runners or, wrestlers do really well if they can swim. That's the big if.
That is
if you get a wrestler that can swim, off the chart, does really well at buds.
Right.
But so we got a mix of everything. We get some guys that are non-athletes.
Yep.
But that's okay, because I tell people all the time, you don't have to be an athlete to be in shape.
True.
You can be a non-athlete and be very, very fit. You might not be great at throwing a ball, or your hand-eye coordination might not be that great, but that's okay. We can still get you running fast, swimming fast, doing pull-ups and lifting weights, and it works. So we work with all types, and it's a lot of fun, because especially in the summer when we're trying to peak our running, that's when these kids from the cross-country team come out. And they kick our butts running. But then I stop them, and we stop off at a pull-up bar. Then we kick their butts.
Yeah.
So it's everybody has a little weakness when it comes to this type of training. I mean, even the SEAL test, for instance, it's a swim,
Right.
it's a pull-up, push-up, sit-up, and a 1.5 mile run. Not very often is somebody great at all 5 of those events. A big guy, might be able to do some, pull-up, push-up, sit-ups, big upper body guy, but he's, if he was like me, anything over 100 yards was long distance when I was a powerlifting football player. So 1.5 miles is long distance. You have to change that. You have to spend some time really getting your intervals down and speeding up your pace, as well as lengthening your distance to make that work, as well as swimming too. If you don't have a swimming background, that's really tough. Or if you have only a swimming background, what happens is then you start adding gravity to your workouts. Then all the aches and pains from shins, knees, hips, all those things start flaring up on you because you've been in zero gravity for 10 years swimming.
That's right. That's right. It seems like some guys, like, you also have to be resilient. Like, just through working with so many athletes, I've seen some, like, they just get hurt all the time. But on the flip side, I also feel like the one that gets hurt all the time is like up here, they like let it really get to them versus saying, okay, I'm a little bit banged up. Let me work around it. Let me keep it going versus they let the injury debilitate them.
Right.
And it seems like that, like, stick-to-itiveness that, Brad McLeod calls it, that fire in the gut. He says, like, if you don't have that, like, then you probably are going to get hurt. It's almost like you will yourself to either heal faster or you will yourself to, like, kind of be, I don't
Right.
know, like, fragile.
Right. I mean, I've known, I've had many injuries over the years, whether it's knee injury or,
How do you
femur,
work around them?
broken ankle, but, I was doing upper body workouts,
Right.
I was doing abs,
Yep.
I mean, you still keep moving. Just because you have a bad leg doesn't mean you can't stop working out.
And you've probably found it. I've found that doing that heals you faster because you're not sitting on the couch sulking, saying, "Oh, I'm not doing anything."
Yeah. I mean, you're getting your circulation going,
Yeah, it definitely makes you feel better. I was actually down in Maryland. It was like the fall. It was a little bit before wrestling season, and they had the Maryland State Wrestling Coaches Association.
Oh, yeah.
And I met the coach from American, and the wrestling community has exploded in Maryland. And Carrie Colat, do you know that name?
Mm-mm. No.
Carrie Colat is, I'm always confused if he's at NC State or UNC, but he's the head assistant wrestling coach. He was
Okay.
an Olympian. He was a two-time national champ from Lock Haven, but he was from Pennsylvania, moved to Maryland. I think that's where his wife is from, and he started teaching all the coaches and started like a young like rec programs for the young wrestlers, and now they have a real powerful wrestling program. University of Maryland has Kerry McCoy, who was an Olympian and a Penn State wrestler, and they got a great wrestling program there, and it's I'm sure you'll be seeing a lot of those kids trying to get to Naval Academy.
Yeah, you know what? We have, that's a good point. Yeah, like wrestling popped up as a, under 10 sport, under 10 years old sport here in Maryland, just like baseball. So, you can go on a wrestling mat and start wrestling little kids now. They didn't have that when I was little. I mean, I wrestled like 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade until, I realized I'm losing way too much weight and I need to get big for football. So I focused on football and powerlifting in 11th and 12th grade.
Down in Florida, there's a town called Brandon, which is like that's like the hotbed of wrestling down there. Very tough.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, aside from when you in the 80s, you were reading Joe Weider magazines, and then what were some of the resources that really inspired you, or maybe even the movies or things that inspired you to train differently and to continue this route that you're on, like being strong, being tough? Like, what inspires you? Things, people, places?
When I was a teenager, it was definitely sports. I wound up playing 5 sports, throughout, middle school and high school. baseball, wrestling, track, powerlifting was a sport in my high school, and football. So it was really fun, being on the powerlifting team because it just made sense. Because I was lifting weights anyway, I might as well get a trophy out of it, and be on a team. And so I think that was probably what was driving me more. I mean, my coach had coaching magazines and coaching books, but they weren't really like big big open market, programs. This is what, the coaches was doing. This is how the coaching was teaching. Coaches were teaching power cleans and clean and jerks, things like that. So it was more of a, I guess, a technique from my coach. My coach really pushed technique. So, trying to make him happy was probably one of the things that I wanted to do the most in that weight room, especially with perfect form. And then he'd let me go a little heavier. I couldn't go heavier until, he checked the box.
That is a rare. That is
Really
a rare
good.
coach. You don't hear
Really.
about that too much in the high schools.
Yeah, yeah. He was. I don't know why. I mean, I think maybe back then in the '80s, people were always concerned if you were lifting weights at 14, you're gonna stunt your growth.
Right.
And, he didn't really believe that, but he wanted to at least, let the town folk, acquiesce a little bit,
Sure.
and so he could, um, what's a good way of framing it? So he could at least lift weights with us, but they were happy when, he didn't have a, ninth grader with 400 pounds on a squat.
Right. And then what about when you got into the SEAL teams? What were you guys training like when you were deployed? And I'm not sure what your deployment schedule is like. From what I understand today, since 9/11,
Yeah.
SEALs and just, I mean, military in general, or SEALs really, the deployment schedule is it's brutal from what I hear. What were you guys doing to stay in shape when you guys were deployed and you didn't have,
Yeah.
a quote unquote gym?
Yeah, it's in the '90s, we were still moving a lot. We were training a lot. I mean, I remember my first year of being engaged with my wife. I was gone 9 months. My first year of marriage, I was gone 9 months. And it was you're just busy. You're traveling. You're deploying. We deployed in the Mediterranean, so bounced around several countries there and trained with our allies. These were peacetime deployments, but you were always there in case something happened. So every now and then things happen, whether it was Somalia or when in Bosnia. So things like that, would come up. To SEAL teams in the '90s, but it was hit or miss. I tell you what, in the '90s, not many SEALs had combat action. I mean, you could retire with 20 years and maybe not even see combat, whereas now, I mean, after 9/11, these guys won't even see peace. I mean, everybody at the SEAL team, combat action. Yeah, so it was a different world back then, and we trained a lot. Whether it was, and you know what, this is where I kind of picked up my understanding of periodization. Through some trainers that we had at the SEAL team. One thing that we did is, you dive a lot, and when you dive in the winter, and this is probably why I still do it, is I like to put on weight in the winter. It's like my little hibernation phase.
Yeah.
It's almost natural. It's almost like this natural cycle of, when it gets cold, I'm going to put on some weight and won't be as cold when I'm outside, especially when you're underwater, and you're breaking ice to get into it. You need a little extra cushion there, to just keep you alive. And then, during the spring and the summer when it got hot and, we're running, moving around a lot, you really needed to be a little more lean and be a little more cardiovascularly fit, to do that. I mean, you still need to keep your cardiovascular up year round, but, it definitely, I found that after a decade of keeping my intensity level way up here, by 30, I was near broken, right? So since I was 30 and on, so the last 15 years, I've gone through just a little bell curve throughout the year, peaking and ebbing in certain events. While I'm peaking in cardio, I'm not so much peaking in my strength. When I'm peaking in my strength, I'm not peaking in my cardio. So it's, it's a cycle where I'm giving my joints a break, from the high repetition and the running, and then, building up some strength during that period, and vice versa. So it's a good little cycle to, kind of, work it out. And I've kind of got it down now, so where the year looks like 4 bell curves,
Right.
peaking on 4 different events.
So when you were away and deployed, especially going to the to the other country, especially the Mediterranean, I mean, I'm assuming there was not really a whole lot of, I guess, quote unquote gym equipment. So what was like a training routine? Did you guys just kind of like as a group say, hey, let's do this today, let's do that? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, I mean, we had group PTs, so our team would work out together. Somebody would come up with a workout of the day, and it was usually some kind of beat down that made no sense. And then, as one of the officers on there, I really tried to make it so it would make sense. So while we're deployed, we at least got on a upper body, lower body split cycle. So, we do upper body one day, lower body the next. Long run or long swim with fins would be part of our, leg workout.
Right.
Whereas our upper body, we'd focus on, we'd make our own pull-up bars, make some dip bars, push-ups,
Nice.
abs, and just go to town.
What about the other guys, the other military from the other countries? You guys were training with them in tactical stuff, or what did you pick up from them, either good or bad, as far as like the physical training or any kind of training? Anything ring a bell that you guys were like, wow, these guys got this going right?
Well,
We
you know
need to
what?
do
There
that.
there are some really good guys out there in other countries. They have some really good groups, but there are some that aren't so. That have a completely different culture as far as training. Israelis off the chart, fantastic. Italians really good. Germans really good. I'm not going to get into the ones that aren't so bad because I
Right.
don't want to
What
torque
was the
everybody.
good stuff that you
At least in
learned?
the early '90s, there were a couple that didn't really understand hydration. We'd go on these long ops and everybody be chugging water. By the time before I'm even leaving, I got a gallon of water, over the course of the day, in me, especially on a long dive, something like that. And you need that extra water. Sometimes it makes that, wetsuit just a little warmer, and, but there were guys they were smoking, they were drinking cappuccinos and drinking wine before a dive. So we just started laughing when they were doing this, and we knew that they weren't going to last very long. And sure enough, they were hyping out in about 45 minutes, whereas we were underwater for about 4 hours.
That sounds like a typical American today.
Yeah.
Oh God, what were some of the training methods that you picked up from the guys, from the Israelis, from the Germans, from the Italians? Anything in particular that really stuck with you, and you were like, "Hey, man, that's great stuff they're doing."
You know what? You think about it was really the British and the Israelis where we learned the most, because they're the ones that were already decades into anti-terrorism.
Right.
Right? Because you had the British and the Irish going on, and Israelis, they got every country around them hates them. So, they're constantly on guard, and they had the most experience. So, when we worked with those guys, we were physically fine, but they had a lot of different tactical experiences that we brought back, and I think you can learn a lot from your allies, especially if they've got decades worth of fighting the bad guy and you don't.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the guys that in the '90s that had that training, when 9/11 occurred, going into a combat situation for the first time, that's what keeps them alive, and that's what keeps them, being some of the baddest soldiers, in the world, because of, having that experience with, whether it was British SAS or SBS or, Israeli Special Forces too.
Yeah.
So.
When my family, Everybody except for me, all served in the Israeli military. So what's so funny is that
Hmm.
we moved to the country in '76. So I think I was 11 months old. They said, and my mom always says she's like your father was in great shape till he moved to America. So now I have the two kids, and it's been snowing here on the East Coast, as you know. And when we were, my older brother's 2 years older, but my dad used to take us. We in the apartments when we lived in New Jersey. I may have been like 4. He'd put my brother, myself, and my brother's friend on those snow sleighs, the one with the steel blades.
Oh yeah.
Man, he used to just sprint around the apartments like, from what I recall, it felt like forever. And now that I got the kids doing it, I was like, wow, man, my dad was so strong, and I could only imagine like some of the training they had him do. I see photos of him. He's got some old photos of him in the army, like out in the snow, out in the Golan Heights, and the what I've always learned from like going back to Israel and having some friends there is they were just tough. The dudes were just tough, and they were hardened. And I think the parents were also hard, and everybody's like, they weren't really the smartest in training, because the guy that actually owned the gym in town was a former PT instructor for the Israeli military, and he was a bodybuilder, and he had all those guys do a lot of bodybuilding movements, but they just worked him hard. And I think even though it wasn't perfect, which, as it probably perfect works against you. He just made everybody tough.
Yeah, I mean, if you take some bodybuilding movements, mix it in with some just regular training, you put a backpack of 80 pounds on your back, you're starting to make that a little more functional.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, yes, there are free weight lifts that could probably serve you better, in that capacity, but you do what you can, and now, and with a lot of experience out there, a lot of new studies out there now, this whole new genre of tactical fitness out there. There's so many different variations, whether it's a TRX suspension trainer,
Right.
or yoga. You can do a variety, powerlifting, Olympic lifts.
Yeah.
You've got all types of movements now that can prepare you for many of those things.
Right. So I want to just show everybody, this is actually your first book, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, and then we got the most recent one here.
Right.
And I want to, it's cool. You got everything in there. You've got body weight, you've got the swim stuff, you've got the running, you've got some bodybuilding work, because you got to put on the muscle. I mean,
Yep.
Muscle is critical. You have a lot of unique things through these workouts. How do you feel like these, or like, what's your motivation? You get these books out, and what is your motivation behind putting those books out that keeps you going from a personal standpoint? And I hate saying, you're a Navy SEAL. I hate saying a former Navy SEAL. I feel like there's no such thing. But,
No, I am a former Navy SEAL. I won't. I don't mind people saying that. It's the guys now who are Navy SEAls
right.
deserve being called Navy SEAls. You know what I mean? I don't. I'm a former Navy SEAL. Those guys right now that are still in are off the charts. Doing what we need them to do.
And is that what motivates you to continue to put out the books and to roll with your business the way you have it going? I mean, you've been not late '90s, '98. That was like the second year maybe of like e-commerce.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. And back then, I mean, it was most people had dial-up.
Yeah.
So I was selling ebooks, a year later, and I had to keep them. People would yell at me if they were a megabyte, big. So some of my ebooks, are just really small pictures, way back then. So good news is I've been able to update a lot of those, and now they're, I'm linking videos in them, and so they're turning out to be a lot better produced. It's just taken some time because over the years I've created about 40 different programs.
Yep.
And each one of these programs are specifically answer to a fitness test and a follow-on training. So if you want to be an FBI agent, there's a fitness test you have to take. If you want to be an Army Ranger, there's a fitness test you have to take, as well as the training that you have to do after the fitness test. So I've kind of focused on two things. One, preparing to get to the training, and then preparing to get through the training, because the training and through the training are two different animals.
Right.
And then there's a third level where a lot of people don't realize, and that is once you're at the training, it's a completely different animal. I mean, you're more a tactical athlete now, and that's where a lot of people go wrong, especially in preparation, because they will see what the Navy SEALs and the Special Forces are doing for their workouts, whether it's CrossFit workouts or it's tactical athlete workouts, whatever. And that's fine. It's a great program, to keep you tactically proficient and, able to move fast in and out of helicopters, up and down steps, and do all that stuff. But the training to get to that is completely different. I mean, like SEAL training, you basically have to be like a triathlete.
Right.
But once you're a SEAL, the requirements to running 10 miles on the beach or swimming 5 miles in the ocean aren't really there anymore. I mean, most, SEAL missions, you might have to walk a little ways with a backpack on your back, or you're jumping out of a helicopter, running up a couple flights of steps and jumping back in. Completely different animal. You don't necessarily need to be the triathlete in the SEAL programs, and that's where a lot more strength and conditioning comes in. So that if anybody makes a mistake with their preparation, it's usually that. They aren't really focusing on the test to get into the training, and they're not really focusing on try to get through the training. They're really focused on what the SEALs are doing now.
That's a great
And it's
point.
two different animals.
That is a great point, because you're right. I've I don't know where I came across it, but maybe from seeing like the videos with Bud's Class 234, there was like, or what maybe it could have been like reading Marcus Luttrell's Lone Survivor in the earlier portion of the book, where he's talking about, I think they get to a point where they're running like pretty much a half marathon on a regular basis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that just becomes their thing. Let's I want to close this out and then ask you though, is there like any question that you wish people would ask you, or you wish somebody would ask you?
Well, that's a good one. Because I get so many darn questions, and I love them, because these questions that I get by email help me to inspire me, I guess, to write articles. And that's really what I do. I write articles, post them on military.com or stewsmith.com, other websites pick them up, and so depending on what the question is, they might become an article, 200, 400 word, you can call them blogs or whatever, but basically that's what I do. People inspire me with their emails. There are questions that are just stupid. I used to think there's no such thing as a stupid question, but I've been proven wrong.
That is true.
Stupid ones being, if I'm swimming in a meter pool, how many laps do I need to do to make it a 500-yard pool? You know what? Take some initiative and figure out yards to meter conversions. It's not my job to really answer those type of questions.
Yeah.
And another one too, when I get an email and it's all text language with no punctuation, I just send it back. I said learn how to write.
Right.
Especially if you're asking for help, you're requesting somebody's advice.
You want people to do leg work.
At least type.
That's I think
put a period and a question mark when it needs to be there. Otherwise, I don't know what the hell you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's huge to just, it seems like we're trying to get people to raise the standard, but we just want people to do simple things like doing the legwork, meaning you've got, I can relate, you've got hundreds, thousands of articles and information pieces out there, and they're free, and people don't want to do the legwork to search for it. So we want them to just show some initiative. Right there, I think is pretty much a red flag as to who would make it and who wouldn't. you know?
Yes, absolutely. Especially military, law enforcement, firefighter professions, which is really what I kind of focus on. Having initiative is a very big part of your success in that world. And um, I mean, whether it's a Google search or it's actually just going through my list of articles that I have on one page,
Right.
you can find them. And I've already answered probably about 50% of my email answers. I'll just send the article link, say, hey, check it out, and it's already answered, you know. But not everybody knows me when they first email me, but I don't expect them to, know everything that I do and like, oh wow, you got a whole lot of articles here, when they first come see me. But
Yeah, it could be. I think sometimes like we put out so much information, this like we made it. I think we've just things are get so easy for people that they forget to do the work. Let me ask you this final question: What, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, what have been or what has been an obstacle that you faced that you've overcome that you think is a great lesson to share with people that could help them overcome obstacles? We got a
oh
lot
man,
of entrepreneurs that listen, and I think the lessons are just they parallel life. So I'd love to hear like an
sure,
obstacle or something that happened to you where you really had to fight to get back up to fix this.
right. Well, you know what? I think evolving with technology has been the greatest thing that I've been able to do, but also the hardest thing I've had to do because it's a constant learning curve. Because, it used to be when I first started, people would email, right? And then, they buy what's this ebook thing, and, so now they're really comfortable buying ebooks, right? And that's even getting old, now. So I've evolved into the app world, making
Right.
apps, whether it's, turning some of my ebooks into apps or, just some cool workout ideas that can help you double your push-ups, make that an app. Um, so it's evolving with the technology and trying to keep up. I mean, my website right now has about 800 articles on it. So unfortunately, I started my website back in 98, 99, right? And so I am going through a process now of updating my website to make it, 2010 worthy, right? So, so that has been a huge challenge to take all that content and now put it onto a new server, a new system, whether it's WordPress or Drupal or whatever, that trying to keep up to date with the technology is the hardest part because if you don't evolve with the technology, next thing you know, you're pretty shut down.
Yeah. So would you say, if, like we said that in a nutshell, it's like in life, I mean, you've got to evolve. Um, you have
Yeah.
to evolve as a
Yeah.
person and not be resistant to learning.
Right. And YouTube videos, videos like webinars, stuff like this. I mean, you got to be comfortable doing them and be willing to put them out there and it's just more content of your stuff. Whether it's you talking to me or me talking to someone else, it's people will start seeing you and your business grows.
Yeah. The way technology is evolving is just staggering. And as an entrepreneur, I say to myself all the time, like I personally enjoy being in a hot gym or outside training versus the computer stuff. But if the goal is to really change the lives of people, the bottom line is that they're on their phones.
Yep.
You drive your car. 75% of people aren't watching the road; they're on their phone. It just tells you where people are. And I think it's the same thing with my training and how you mentioned like you have those those peaks and those down periods in training. I've had to evolve the same with my training. When I was feeling beat up, I had to evolve and do strictly body weight. When I started, getting into that body weight, I had to learn mobility. Even though I wasn't
Yeah.
excited, I wasn't psyched up to get on a foam roller. It's like
Yeah.
you have to learn these things. You have to evolve. You have to be open-minded to learning. And you're right. That's the ticket to success. Let's tell everybody some key places that they could learn from you, find out about you, and also books could be picked up on your websites and, of course, Amazon. And this actually, man, this is really the first one from when I used to
That's
go
it.
to
That's it.
to Borders Books, which I don't even know if Borders Books
Yeah, no.
exist. Barnes
Yeah,
and
that one is
Noble.
all calisthenic based. That
Yeah,
first one, it's all calisthenics, and lots of ab work. Flutter kicks. Works of core. Pull up, push up varieties off the charts, and lots of running, lots of swimming, a lot of
yeah.
mixing of all those exercises together.
That's
Works really well.
That's a big book that I'd recommend for everybody because I'm a big proponent of you got to move your body, you got to be strong, and like you, as you said, as we age, like I feel like you just can't lift. You got to swim, you got to bike, you got to run, you got to be able to do all those things. So let's give them your website, Stu, and any other places you want them to connect with you.
Sure, yeah. My website's stewsmith.com. That's STEW, like the soup,
Yep.
Stu Smith. And, I have a heroesoftomorrow.org, which you can read a little bit about more what we do there. In fact, we actually have trainers across the country who just volunteer their time, maybe a couple hours a week, just teaching kids, proper form for taking a fitness test or whatever. And you can see those cities that do that. I mean, they're volunteering, like I said, a couple hours. Like if you ever come to Maryland and work out with us, we do it about 5-6 days a week. And we get on it. We got a lot of spec ops wannabes in our group.
I love that. I didn't even know that you had that. I'm going to look into that. I mean, kids have I work with kids, but I used to be a elementary school phys ed teacher, and just
Oh,
that stuff's huge to me. So I'm going to check that out. So yeah, and I'll link everything up below this. So everybody, thanks for tuning in to Strongcast. This was episode 11 with Stu Smith, former Navy SEAL. And don't worry about writing links down. I'm going to link up the Facebook pages, the YouTube. Everything will be under this at undergroundstrength.tv. Stu, thanks so much, my man, and we will talk to you soon.
absolutely. Thanks a lot, Zach.
Thank you.